All right, good. Let's see. It is early morning for you on Friday and midday at early afternoon in Asia. So you guys are catching up. I think you're about 15 hours behind, 12 hours in the East Coast and 15 in the West Coast. And then in between, all right, when you're over here for a while, you really learn to know the time zone difference. All right, let's jump into Roundhill Weekly. So something I did this week, I think somebody asked me about it. I had only done it on Pltw. So the Roundhill single stocks that pay weekly, I'm going to talk about all their distributions that were announced. But after that, after I compare and roll up, then I'm going to come down and compare them to the Yieldmax and then to the underlying and go through that scenario for you guys. So let's jump in here in the Nvidia Weekly by Roundhill. So they had a distribution, or they've declared 49 cents. People always tell me to not point, right? So I can put it in the middle, but better just to come down on this one because it's not relevant. All right, 49 cents, yielding 62.02. The current price being 41.34, it was down 94 cents since the week before, where it was 42.28. And that week had been up a massive 586. So there's been, you're seeing the market rebound, but I think it's topping and starting down. We shall see again. Probabilities it's turning down. Let's watch it. All right, moving from Nvidia. And so this is something else I find helpful here. Nvidia has paid on the weeklies throughout the period. These all started, by the way, the kickoff was 219, so they were able to, within a week, have a distribution. So 447 has been paid out, but the fund has dropped 855, right? Well, what is synonymous with 219? That whole February is the topping. I'd have to go look within the month and see which day or two or three were the actual top. But February was the top. So max of the underlying, this was a high period in the market. We're kind of high again now, but we're not quite back up to those February levels. All right. So TSW, or Tesla as the underlying, paid a whopping 65 cents. Now, they're not as inexpensively priced the way Tesla is, or Coney, or some of the ones that have had NAV erosion. I mean, Coney's giving you house money, right? If you got in Coney from the beginning, you've gotten all your money back, right? Even if it's gone from 20 to 9, right? You got that $20 back. And smart people are buying more and more when it's cheap, because if it builds its distribution, Coinbase gets added to the S&P, crypto's running. This ship should right itself. That's my rationale. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. All right. So down 64, though. Some of the funds, yeah, the other one drifted down. That should be the theme. So when you don't see that, that's a positive, right? 83.26 for the year. Way to go, Roundhill Tesla, or Tesla. All right. And I'm also going to compare the curve. I didn't this time because they don't have the coin, they don't have the Pltw, but they do have the Aapw. They do have, I think they have Nvidia. Yeah. Um, and so they would have, and they have Tesla. So they would have three of the five. All right. So moving on to Aapw. Aapw down also, right? That's the theme here. Aapw has a paltry yield in comparison, paid 27 cents. Um, and look at that. When have they paid 27? Well, they've paid less than 27. There's a 27. Um, so we shall see on, whoops, I thought that was orange. Oh, come on. Sometimes these cursors just really like to mess with you. Mouse. Okay. All right, moving right along. Coiw, the Roundhill version of Coiw, 78.4. Now they've had an 84, an 81, a 79, and a 97. Now, look at where the price of the underlying crashed, right? No pun intended with Yieldmax on crashed. So 30.2, it didn't take but a 56-cent distribution. Now we have a 65-cent distribution, but we're only 78.40. But that's a heck of a payout. All right, moving along to Pltw, the $7.04, almost $7.05. I can't wait to collect my money in my regular account and my 401k. I mentioned I added a little bit in the pre-market at like 61. Could have got it a little bit lower after it opened, but coulda, shoulda, woulda, Yeah, I was happy to get more because why did it go down so much? The ex-dividend went down to $7. You get it while you can. All right. So 68 cents, an 86% yield. Now, surprisingly, that looks like the best yield, is the best yield even though it's been down to 30, 29, 28. This looks like the low. That March, we really crashed there. It looks like on a bunch of these. $28 for this one. It's now 41. All right. So nice distributions. Wanted to get that to you. All right, guys. Here's the analysis and comparison of total return and all that, then compare on other people. So let's just go across the aisle. We all know they launched on February 19th. Here's the inception price. Invest $1,000. What was the price last week? So even when I'm comparing on monthlies, I just went back a week to humor the comparison. All right, so weekly change, right? This one keeps flipping back. I make it red, and then when I start OBS, I use a command, and it works for OBS, but it also flips my Excel back to the last setting. Weird. Okay, so the only winner here was Coiw on a weekly change. How about on a gain to loss? Well, Palantir's doing the best in terms of since inception, only going down 705%. All right. Here's just the dollar amount relative to the loss in 1,000. Here is the total dividends paid. And you can see that Tesla, the TSW one, okay, has paid more now than PLTW. What is its price? But its inception price was higher. How is its current price higher? No, Pulte's pulled ahead. All right, so it's winning in the total return. The only positive, okay, in the group in total return. Now, mindful, we're in a bear market in the sense that this couldn't have picked a worse time to launch, right? If you took December to January, you took 93 days from just about any other time. But this dictates this is when these launch. So when I do all my comparisons down here, I have to do apples and apples. Otherwise, it's not a fair comparison. So you can see the best return is PLTW. All right. Anything else I can tell you is what I did is I take dividends, you get an actual dividend return, but that's just over those 93 days. So now you want to annualize that number. Same thing on the loss. Here's your actual gain or loss over the 93 days, right? From what the inception price was to the current price. This is your annualized loss. And I probably should limit this to you theoretically can only lose 100%, right? So I should just put a max in there, a little expression in the formula to limit that. But it doesn't change it radically. If I take 9% away or something, I'm 73 over here. So that no way that's going to be the winner. So the highest total return performing Roundhill fund is PLTW, followed by Coin, then followed by Nvidia, and then followed by Tesla, whatever you want to call this, TSW, and then Apple being, holding up the rear. All right, so I thought somebody asked, you ask, and I try to deliver when it's reasonable. So here's your NVW. Everything that's up there is here, right? 3206. So the numbers are all done. What I have to do is go get Nvidia, put the distributions in for the same time frame. So let's go up and focus on this. Now you'll notice the distributions are out here. I already have the other distribution, so I just say equal to my sheet up there. But on Nvidia, now what you'll notice on Nvidia, on Tesla, and on Pltw, this one just came in. So I'm able to get 4 of the monthly payments because they're all after the date of 219. But on these guys, their payments were early in the month for February before 219. So in theory, that's not fair, going and pulling a distribution when, you didn't even own the stock, right? But that lowers their competitiveness because they were close. They were 3 weeks of the 4 weeks. So if I come out here in another 10 or 12 days, then all of these guys have gotten one more distribution, but these two will have a monthly distribution. So I try and let you know it's never perfect. All right. So what I did on these guys, everybody knows, and people hate it sometimes. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I want to put black back there, and I want to make this white. Okay. All right. What I did, and then I went in and I looked at the two funds. I looked at Roundhill and Yieldmax, and I made green be the winner. And then I just left white down here. So you can see that there are the first three in here are winners for Yieldmax. So Nvidia, by a very slight edge over this period of time, had a higher dividend distribution. Okay, it got 4 monthly payments in here. These guys have gotten 13, which is like, a little over 3 months of payments. Just the way it works. It's never gonna be perfect. Um, and that's where we are, but very close. A minus 32% for their Nvidia and Roundhill, minus 31.7. It doesn't get much closer than that. Now, how did you do on distributions? Well, you got a 22 to a 9% dividend return because you got a much lower, Roundhill's prices are higher. You got a $15 stock. Now, it hasn't always. The beginning of this period, it was 21.49. This guy was 49. Even though this looks close, this is this is close to a 3-to-1. 3-to-1 would be 27, 2-to-1 would be 18. So we're like 2.3-to-1. And you see it here annualized. It's 85% versus 35. But Nvidia comes over here, and just like you have a lot of nav erosion. Okay. But hung on for the win right down the stretch. So I mark it green. But what's the best thing to have done? I know when we want income, we get income funds. But just so I prove my point, it's only down 18. Why? Because the market's awful during this particular period. All right, let's go through Tesla. Tesla, there, Roundhill's Tesla, if you will, and Tesla. So here, Tesla wins by a good margin and actually beats the underlying here, which is pretty unique. But the underlying doesn't have any distribution. Of course, it doesn't beat it on actual NAV gain or loss, right? Tesla only went down 5.41. Tesla went down 25%. TSW went down 20. Now, almost always your gain or loss is less, guys. So if Roundhill sometimes can win by not losing, in other words, if they're paying somewhere close or they're not going down, they're staying with the run up more, they'll be able to win some of these. And that's how you really look at it. So total return matters. And look at this. Tesla came along and actually lost less than if you just bought the underlying. I don't really know. Oh, because I had to annualize. So in this period of time, yeah, look, let's take Tesla for a minute. So Tesla was down in this short period of time, 25%, the most of the three funds. And when you use your 3.7 multiplier, which is 365 divided by 93, you get, when you annualize it, you have a 98% loss. In other words, you're going down a quarter every 93 days. So you're going to lose all your money if it sticks to its trend. They never do. Okay. And what did you do on distribution? Now, on your distribution, just in the 93 days, you got almost 21%. Look at this. You got that there. So, and Pltw had a 26, Coiw had a 14, Aapw had 7. So Yieldmax is always, almost always going to outpay, out yield, hence Yieldmax. But it matters in this case that carried them to a win even over the underlying. And a lot of it had to do with this 81 versus 98. These guys, that 5% when annualized became a 21%, and they didn't have any yield to bring that back up. So that's the story there. Let's take a look at Aapw. All the flavors of Aapw, right? Greens and reds. And so who won this? Well, the green tells you. Aapw won it by a fair amount. Although, again, this 109 could get down and this becomes 70, but it still wins. So, and it didn't win pretty, right? It's like the prettiest of three ugly girls. Well, this is the prettiest of three ugly girls here. I mean, my gosh, Aapw lost 69% in 93 days. Aapw lost 59 because it had a 30% annualized yield. It got $1.30, which is 7.7. So you guys get it. All right. So coin, all the flavors of coin, right? Gold, silver, platinum. You tell me about the coin. Some of my favorite coins: gold eagles, silver eagles, maple leaves, panda. China has a beautiful panda. 0.999 1 ounce gold coin. All right. So on this one, the win for Roundhill. They win the last two. And they won it. Well, they didn't beat the underlying, and normally they don't. But 7% is a lot better than 32% in Coney. And we all know Coney's just waking up not too long ago. So its big hammer was its 22 was double the NAV over the 93 days. And it couldn't double. If it had doubled the dividend annualized, then, you know, it didn't double 9.27. It only got 4.46. But remember, I said on some of these, it only got 3 payments. Well, so did Aapw, and it managed to pull out the win. But that is a bit of a detriment. That means there were a little bit more pay times. But again, these guys that had 4 payments, that's a little bit more pay times than Roundhill got in weeklies. All right. So coin for the win, and then Roundhill's Coney, if you will. PLTW rocks a win, 17.01. Now, what happened, in some fairness to this, I added the 7 and then I took today's price. Well, today was ex-dividend. So it wouldn't have gotten the win, but it would have gotten back down to where it was 2 or 3% negative here. But just saying, right? Whereas when these guys have an ex-dividend, it's on what? 68 cents was the distribution for PLTW. It has gone through that ex-dividend yet. It will in a day or two. All right, guys. So hopefully this helps. Hit me up at any time. I'll be doing this regularly. I'm going to add Curve back in here because Curve is a monthly payer that tends to hold its NAV really well. Always pays much less than Yieldmax. All right, guys, this is Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Have a great Friday ahead and a great weekend. I'm going to be doing a lot on the miners this weekend. All right, guys, bye for now.